Stomach or gastric cancer is not one of the more commonly diagnosed cancers in the United States.
And it's also a very common reason for death related to cancer around the world. So it's a major problem.
But it is the fifth most common cancer worldwide.
There are not too many people who focus on gastric cancer in the United States because it's an uncommon cancer here.
And one of the most challenging cancers to diagnose.
Unfortunately, we can expect to continue to see 1 million new cases of gastric cancer in the world well into the future.
It is the third leading cause of cancer death. However, this disease receives less media attention and research funding than less prevalent and deadly cancers.
Stomach cancer research receives about $15 million in National Cancer Institute NCI research funds annually, compared to $112 million for liver cancer, which has a similar incidence and mortality rate. The total NCI research budget for 2021 was $6.4 billion.
You need a group of dedicated people that are willing to spend the time and energy and resources to basically make the research happen.
Over 1.5 million people worldwide are diagnosed with stomach cancer yearly.
If so many people with stomach cancer ultimately die of their disease, then who else, can tell their story?
This video intends to change the daily conversation and bring much-needed awareness and some answers to this overlooked and silent killer.
Stomach cancer certainly doesn't get the play in the press or media that maybe other cancers do because it's not as common. So we have to raise awareness, and awareness helps support research.
Stomach or gastric cancer can be divided into various types, like lymphoma, sarcomas, or gastrointestinal tumors, which are not the same but are present in the stomach wall.
Basically, it's like any other cancer in your body that when it starts to form and grow, it wants to invade. If left unchecked, will just continue to grow and spread if not caught.
Tissue biopsies can be taken from various areas where we can detect early changes that suggest that a person's on the path to cancer or may have a microscopic cancer.
Clearly, we'd like to diagnose people earlier. Unfortunately, in the United States, for instance, a lot of gastric cancers are diagnosed at a later stage. And at that point, it's just harder to treat.
Several factors can increase the risk of stomach cancer.
The primary cause of gastric cancer is a bacteria called Helicobacter pylori.
Helicobacter pylori is a common bacteria affecting about 30% to 40% of people in the United States.
It's the only bacteria that has been formally classified as a human carcinogen, although there may be others. And the bacteria is very common throughout the world. This bacteria, we think, is responsible for probably more than 90% of all the gastric cancer cases that occur in the world. And studying it, where it is and how it does its work will help us learn ways that we can prevent gastric cancer in the future.
When left untreated, it can cause stomach inflammation and ulcers, and can also cause chronic gastritis, which can damage the lining of the stomach.
If that infection never took hold, people would be at much lower risk for developing gastric cancer.
H. pylori can produce a toxin that damages the lining of the stomach, but is also spread through close contact with an infected person. If H. pylori infection leads to a stomach ulcer, the symptoms may be more severe and include
pain in the upper abdomen, especially after eating, feeling full after eating a small amount of food, weight loss, black stools, vomiting blood.
There are several ways to diagnose H. pylori infection. These include
blood test, breath test, stool test, endoscopy.
H. pylori infection can be treated with antibiotics, where treatment is usually successful.
A lot of Helicobacter pylori strains already are resistant to some antibiotics. And so if we try to eradicate the bacteria from the planet, we'd likely fail and generate a lot of antibiotic-resistant strains that would be harder to treat in the future.
There is no sure way to prevent H. pylori infection. However, there are a few things you can do to reduce your risk.
Wash your hands frequently. Avoid sharing utensils or food with someone who is infected. Drink bottled water when traveling to developing countries.
By understanding the causes of cancer, that leads us to the means of the prevention of the cancer. For the early detection work, we're trying to make practical tools that can be put into the field now to detect cancer early and prevent people from getting to the point where the cancer is going to become a fatal disease.
Another factor that can contribute to stomach cancer is age. Stomach cancer is more common in people over the age of 50. The stomach's lining changes as we age, becoming thinner and more susceptible to damage. This makes it more likely for stomach cancer to develop.
Based on their age and their demographics, and possibly by using molecular or genetic markers that we know we could help. So that's something that we're working on both here and with our partners at universities to develop the knowledge of how to target the cancer screening where it'll be most beneficial.
Genetics can also affect some people who are more genetically predisposed to developing stomach cancer.
You're at quite high risk for having colorectal cancer, and we really know that you need that colonoscopy.
This is especially true for people with specific inherited genetic mutations, such as a mutation of the CDH1 and the CTNNA1 gene.
Right now, we use human genotyping techniques. We genotype people, and then we do cases and controls, and we figure out which variants are likely to put you at higher risk. And we build a score using information from across your whole genome.
It can also occur in families who have a history of GAPPS or GAPS, familial GIST, and Lynch syndrome. However, if genetically tested before disease onset, families with these conditions can determine if there is an inherited genetic risk and be proactive with their medical care.
And we already have some leads that we think are useful, but what we need to do is put together a panel of markers that will give us the kind of discrimination that we need to pick out those people who we know are at the highest risk.
In some families, gastric cancer is running in the family, but we can't find a genetic factor. But that still means that there's a family history of cancer, and so people should talk to their physicians and their providers and even consider talking to a genetic counselor about the family history.
Additionally, a diet high in smoked, salted, or pickled foods can cause stomach cancer.
And salt is something that people enjoy, and so it's important that we have really solid evidence about how it affects cancer risk before we use that as a reason to discuss salt intake. We know, for example, that cigarette smoking is an important cause of gastric cancer. It more than doubles your risk of developing gastric cancer. It's not as powerful effect as it has in the lungs, but it is an important effect in the stomach.
Finally, conditions such as ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease can increase your risk of stomach cancer. The symptoms of stomach cancer can vary depending on the cancer stage.
People that have persistent heartburn or just that feeling of fullness after eating, it's not specific, and a lot of times they'll take antacids or things like that for a long time, not knowing that what's really going on is stomach cancer.
However, as the cancer grows, it can cause the following symptoms:
unexplained weight loss, persistent indigestion, nausea and vomiting, abdominal pain, feeling full after eating only a small amount of food, blood in the stool, black stools, yellowing of the skin and eyes.
Before you can treat stomach cancer, you have to know where is it in the stomach. You have to know what it is exactly and where it might be beyond the stomach.
There are good methods of screening for gastric cancer, and this allows us to detect either preneoplastic lesions or microscopic cancers that can be treated endoscopically without a major surgery like a gastrectomy. And therefore people can be cured of their cancer without having this major effect on the quality of life like happens when a stomach has to be removed.
Several tests can be used to diagnose stomach cancer, including upper endoscopy.
First step in diagnosis is usually putting a scope down into the stomach and looking around, because that's where you see it. You see it on the inside of the stomach.
And during upper endoscopy, the stomach can be inspected and tissue biopsies can be taken from various areas where we can detect early changes that suggest that a person's on the path to cancer or may have a microscopic cancer.
One of the challenges with stomach cancer is because it arises from the lining of the inside of the stomach, is that it's hard to find at an early stage.
So right now, these endoscopic screening techniques, which are known to be effective in reducing the risk of dying from gastric cancer, are being used in Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and some parts of China, a few other places in the world where gastric cancer is common, and the societies are wealthy enough and technologically advanced enough in their medicine to be able to apply these techniques widely.
This is a procedure in which a doctor inserts a thin, flexible tube with a camera into the stomach to look for any abnormalities.
There is a system of using upper endoscopy with intensive biopsying that can be used to detect gastric cancer either at a preneoplastic stage or at stage 1.
Other types of tests can be used to diagnose stomach cancer, including CT scan. This imaging test uses X-rays to create detailed images of the inside of the body. MRI scan. This is another imaging test that uses magnetic fields and radio waves to create detailed images of the inside of the body. PET scan. This type of nuclear medicine scan uses a radioactive tracer to show how active a cancer is.
One of the other things that people often get is what's called a laparoscopy, where we put a camera in the belly and we look around the belly to see if cancer has spread anywhere beyond the stomach to maybe other organs in the belly.
The odds for survival of late-stage stomach cancer is 5%. This is truly an aggressive and deadly disease that needs more research funding.
We have to let people with the kind of crazy ideas to investigate these new drugs or new therapies to try and fail and try and fail, because eventually they'll try and they'll succeed.
Stomach cancer is a serious disease, but it is important to remember that early detection and treatment can improve the chances of survival.
But for the most part, the treatment of stomach cancer is going to involve removing the cancer from the stomach, which may involve removing part of the stomach, most of the stomach, or all of the stomach, and then some form of chemotherapy.
If you have any concerns about your health, please see your doctor right away and discuss any family history of gastric cancer.
We want better treatments. Frankly, we need drugs that kill stomach cancer cells regardless. And I think the other goal in all of this is to help people maintain a good quality of life, because stomach cancer, just by virtue of the stomach being such an important organ in our lives, right? That's how we eat and drink and interact with people socially a lot. We need to find better ways to maintain a good quality of life for when people do have to go through chemotherapy or do have to go through surgery. And I think there's some improvements that can be made there. You need that support financially to have the freedom to explore, to try new things, to investigate things that maybe nobody's ever thought of before. It seems as though if you throw enough money at it, that sometimes, a good idea will come up or a breakthrough will happen. Without the fear that you may fail and knowing that you have the ability to keep trying, that's the value of the financial support.